Hi everyone, welcome to a new round of the Pruijssers League. I'm here to take you through the Norway Gnomes games. And we have two world champions playing, and they're not even the top two boards. The Norway Gnomes for this derby against the Oslo Trolls, we have the strongest possible team. We have on board number 1, world champion Magnus Carlsen. On board number 2, world champion second, Mr. Laurent Fressinet. On board 3, we have the world junior champion Aryan Tari. And on board 4, not to forget, we have Elham Abdrlauf, our 13-year-old whiz kid who has been causing a lot of trouble for precisely these players we're playing against on the Oslo Trolls. He's been a menace in the Oslo speed chess circuit, and hopefully playing people he knows he can beat. I'm looking forward to his performance as well. Let's see, we have the chat with us. Yes, we do. Björn Even is asking, who are you playing against? This is actually, you could say, the most important game of the season. We are playing the Oslo Trolls. It's a Norwegian derby, and I'm really excited about it. And Gijo did not pick Aryan Tari on his Pro League fantasy team. That is going to be a big mistake. Tari is going to wreck these trolls apart. We're starting in 5 minutes. 5 more minutes till start. I'm just going to make sure that my guys are on the line so that we're not forfeited for the first round. And Magnus Carlsen is on the line. Aryan Tari is offline. So I'm gonna send a message to Aryan. To make sure that I have all my players. I am the team captain of the Norway Gnomes. This is definitely not an unbiased stream. I'm going to be rooting for my guys, and then the trolls will do their best to get the Norwegian chess royalty. Essentially, they're playing against Magnus. They're playing against Aryan. These are players that getting a point against these guys would be huge. And we have a subscription. Thank you to Groger. I wasn't sure where to place the thunder, but I think that was the best I could do under the circumstances. Jungle Rundle went for gnomes on top 3 boards. Yeah, I understand. I did as well. I picked my 3 guys in the fantasy. Really looking forward to it. I think the top 3 boards, I mean, almost everybody has 3 gnomes on their fantasy team. And I don't think they're going to disappoint. I think the gnomes are going to be really impressive. Pelican asks a very good question. Who is playing for the Oslo Trolls? So the Oslo Trolls are lining up with Frode Urkedal as their first board player. They have a Dutch mercenary, Roeland Pruijssers. And then on the final 2 boards, they have Fredrik Kaasen on the 4th board, and the 3rd board I honestly can't remember, But we're gonna find out because the games are starting in 4 minutes. And Aryan is on the line. That is, as the captain, I'm very happy. Jungle Rundle has the Gnomes as the tiebreak question. Which team is going to score the most points? And he's gone with the Gnomes for the tiebreak question. I've actually not. I've gone with the Chengdu Pandas. I think that team just looks so scary. And I'm reasonably happy we're not in the same division. I think going up against the Pandas would be... it's going to be one of the toughest games of the season. Thank you to Andre for your donation. It's really appreciated. Maybe I should try to find out. I'm just gonna double check that I didn't lose any of my guys. Carlsen is on the line. Tari is on the line. And we have Fressinet. He's playing with the username Zlatan something. Zlatan56. Apparently, Fress is Parisian. And they got a bit of the Zlatan fever. Having Zlatan in PSG. Okay, all my guys are online. We're starting in 2 minutes. In the first game, we will play top against bottom. So in the first round, we will have Urkedal against Elham. We will have Tari against Pruijssers. We will have Fressinet against the mystical fourth guy I can't remember on the troll team, and we will have Magnus against Kaasen. Maybe I said that already. So I should do some follow commands. Follow Magnus Carlsen. Follow Aryan Tari. Follow Zlatan56. And follow Mr. Elham. Okay, and we're off. We're off. And let's go to who makes the first move. We have Elham with the white pieces against Frode Urkedal. And he's playing the Italian opening. And we're getting a very nice greeting from the King of Corn. In the chat. Elham has played an Italian opening and he's off to an okay start. Too early to tell. We'll take a look at Magnus Carlsen playing with the black pieces against Fredrik Kaasen. Fredrik was one of the key players in last year's Gnome team because he was the guy rated 1900 while he actually had gained 500 rating points. In FIDE. So he was one of the key players for the Gnomes, the silver medal winning season, in which he was crucial to lowering the team's average rating. And we see that Magnus is going for the destruction of the white pawn structure. So white gets a doubled pawn, but on the other hand, he has this very good pawn on e5, which can create some attacking chances. So probably white will do something like g3, knight h4, and then push f4, f5, getting that pawn up, joining the attack, trying to open the f-file. That would be a good strategy in this position. And we have a lot of Gnomes fans in the chat. So it's not only here to watch Magnus Carlsen, we also have some proper fans of the team. I'm having trouble getting my setup. This is why. Fredrik is from Tromsø. So he is one of the best players from northern Norway. But he actually moved to Oslo a year ago. So originally he's from Tromsø and one of the, if not the best player from northern Norway. And Fredrik is only, I think, like 16 years old. So he has a promising future. So Magnus managed to open up the position, and I think this is pretty good for him. So white still has some problems with his pawn structure, but this opening of the center means that it's no longer as dangerous white coming with f4, f5, because you can always counter the attacking threat. You can always create counterplay in the center when your opponent starts attacking. So I think this central exchange was in Magnus's favor, and he has one of his favorite type positions. He can go for now maybe h4. The queen always has to protect the bishop on d4. Queen g5, that's interesting. Magnus is trying to further improve his pawn structure. So if the queen trade, he gets the open h file, and he also gets a pawn to g5, which is useful for preventing white to go f4. So Magnus is essentially just doing a trading game, but he's saying that my trades are much more favorable than the trades you're making. So every time he does a trade, he's improving his pawn structure. Very instructive play from Magnus. Magnus has had some magnificent attacking wins, but he has also had really nice positional wins. And to me, this looks like the beginnings of a positional squeeze. I'm not sure about this rook move, because the rook isn't really accomplishing too much along the fourth rank. As long as white keeps his bishop on d4, the rook is pretty limited. I guess something like f3, trying to block the bishop's diagonal, and white is worse, but he can probably try to hold on. I'm gonna go visit some of the other games. We have Laurent Fressinet with the black pieces against Kristian Stuvik Holm. That is the third board player for the Oslo Trolls. And Fress has been playing the opening very quickly. Very quickly. He already has a 4-minute time advantage on the clock, and his position is very solid. Very solid. And he's hoping that the black pieces kind of all trying to attack the d4 pawn. I think he wants to win a pawn by capturing on d4 in the future. And this d5 move he just played, if takes, then queen takes, and you can get another rook to the d file, once again improving your attacking chances against the d4 pawn. Laurent is too strong too fast. says Danish Bear. Yeah, I agree. No, he's no longer too weak, too slow. He's too strong, too fast. French gnome. Yeah, we really... Well, I mean, the French tricolor is the same colors as the Norwegian flag. So we consider him one of our own. Let's take a look at Mr. Elham. And Elham has lost the bishop pair, which is not too great. But on the other hand, he's very solid. Yeah, maybe put a rook in the middle, try to break out with f4. Black is very comfortable, but it's going to be difficult breaking down the white position. Yeah, I am title for Frode Urkedal. That's incorrect. He is a grandmaster, but maybe he hasn't updated his account. Probably he needs to tell chess.com that, you know, I'm a grandmaster now. So I don't think he uses his chess.com account that often. We're gonna look at the final game. It's Aryan Tari with the white pieces against Roeland Pruijssers. And this is a Dutch grandmaster. And he's one of the troll mercenaries. And I must say, I really like Aryan's previous move, c5. It looks interesting to me, trying to open up for the white pieces. White is fully developed, while black still has some pieces on the back ranks. It's going to be interesting to see how this one goes. I would assume you go e4. No e4. He takes on d4. Maybe this is a pawn sacrifice by Aryan. And maybe black is just going to take the pawn and ask you to justify what you just did. So maybe Aryan will need to go take back with his pawn, and then black will take on c5. And this is a pawn sacrifice. So who knows what's going to happen. Maybe you can just take back on c5 and then you have some check. You maybe check first, check, king moves, take on e5, c5. If you take back, then we exchange queens and go knight e5. That looks moderately dangerous. I'm not sure you can do anything with the discovered check though. And they're following this line. I'm actually going to stay on this board for a little while because this might become really interesting. I think black really needs to go knight takes c5. Otherwise, he just has a worse position. And then exchange, knight e5 threatens knight f7. But you can just go rook f8. And to me, it doesn't look very clear. Because you're a pawn down, so you need to justify that somehow, right? Yeah, I don't know. But it does seem like the Dutch guy is uncertain. He feels this could be trouble. So he's going to spend some time trying to figure everything out. Let's go back to Magnus. And they have been moving so fast. This has been also something I noticed about Magnus. He's really using the clock to put pressure on his opponents. And he's already a pawn up. And look at these pawns. Both the pawn on f4 and the pawn on c5 is in massive trouble. It's not going to be easy. I'm saying it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be possible to protect both of those pawns. Maybe it is. Rook b4. I had not considered that. But now maybe rook c2 from Magnus renews the threat of bishop takes c5. Rook takes c5. That's much better. World champion tactic there. If you take back, you take with the bishop and you get the double attack on the king and on the rook, and you end up with 2 pawns up in the rook ending. So Magnus Carlsen sailing to victory in the very first game. He just exchanged the pieces in a very good way, ruined the white pawn structure, and he's being rewarded for it. He picked up both of those two weak pawns. White had pawns on a2 and c2. Those were isolated pawns, and Magnus just came with his rook and took both of them. And now he's going to win this game. 2 pawns down against the world champion. Fredrik is not going to stand a chance. Tom Andy asks, you aren't playing today? No, today I'm not playing. I'm leaving it up to the world champions. And I would even argue that this is a stronger team than had I played. Rook c1. Yeah, no, if you take on c5, you take back with check. So it doesn't matter that there's a possible pin. Yeah, so rook b3 and now maybe just rook c4 back. And there's the new threat of the pawn on f4. And this is all going sideways for Fredrik. So I think I'm gonna call it already. This is a good first round win for Magnus Carlsen. Let's move on to Fressinet. He has been playing really quickly, but on this last move he spent 3 minutes. 3 minutes on this rook to c8. Let's try to figure out why this is important. Probably the rook is just protecting the pawn on c7 so that you free up your knight. So he just wanted to protect something and then have the option of going knight takes d4 on the next move. And actually now I'm tempted to go b4, b5. b5, could that be a move? Taking space on the sides and also harassing the queen? Maybe, but it's very weakening. So he's not going to do it unless it's just good. Can we find some other moves? Somewhat less committing. Queen to a5. Fressinet going for the queen exchange. Takes, rook to c1. Probably the key is still this pawn on d4. He wants to increase the attack on the pawn, but he also wants to remove the queen, which was a defender. Yeah, I think this is still equal-ish. I don't think black has anything big, nor do I think white is much better. This knight c6 is interesting. Now he wants to go knight b4 and threaten stuff up here, whilst also intending to go with the knight to d5. Magnus won. Magnus won. So that's 1-0 for the Gnomes. 2 pawns up, there was no chance. I'm going to take a look at Elham, our 4th board player, and he has lost a pawn. How did that happen? f4, e4 by Urkedal, and he's exploiting the fact that he has a pin down the d file. And yeah, this pawn on d3 is in trouble because of that pin. Elham played f5, but that didn't really help out because that pawn could just be taken. And now his opponent Urkedal has the bishop pair as well as being a pawn up. So we always knew this was going to be a very tough game for Elham. And it seems like Urkedal, the actually number 5 Norwegian player after Agdestein, after Tari, after myself, after Magnus. He is the 5th best Norwegian player with a rating of 2570. So the level of Norwegian players has really increased, not just in the top, but the fact that our 5th player is almost 2600 is a massive improvement compared to history, compared to the past. And then we have Aryan, and actually it proceeded just like I said. Knight e5 for Aryan, then rook f8. And I wasn't sure whether there was a good discovered check in this position. Aryan has given a check, given another check, given another check, and now he has to decide whether this position only is good for a draw. So I think if he can go knight h6 once again, and then it's just going to be a draw. And to me, I cannot really see how to avoid it. He's a pawn down, he has better development, but his knight is being threatened. I mean, if it were black to move, the rook could just take the knight. So he needs to do something very concrete very quickly. And I can't see it. I can't see it. So I think this is going to be a draw. I think Aryan will have to take the move repetition. But it's not going to be a disastrous result, because even though Aryan is the highest rated player of these two guys, he goes to d8, but then he goes back, and this is a 3-time repetition. At this point, the players can claim a draw, and they did. So a draw for Aryan, maybe disappointing for Aryan being white against a player 100 points lower rated, but at the same time, Aryan is our number 3 player, while Pruijssers is their number 2 player. So from a board placement standpoint, this was a pretty okay result. Yeah, I think Elham is in big trouble, and now the bishops are coming to attack the king position as well. I don't think he's going to survive this. I'm going to take a look at Fressinet against Kristian Stuvik Holm, and I don't know what's going on. This is a very strange game. Possibly rook b5, trying to go after the pawn on b2. Maybe Fress can try taking the pawn on d4, but that would lead to a lot of exchanges, and this pawn on c7 might be hanging in the end. But Fress is calculating. He has spent some time on this move, and I think he's seriously considering taking the d4 pawn. He might even go rook d8 and then follow up with e5, creating some kind of passed pawn for himself, but it's not a passed pawn because of the e2. I don't know. I think maybe this move, or if it's good, he's just gonna take the pawn. If it's good, he's gonna take the pawn, and if it's not good, I think he's gonna go rook b5. And also, I mean, White's last move was removing the bishop from the defensive d4. So often you would kind of just assume that your opponent, when giving up the pawn on d4, he knows what he's doing. But at the same time, you need to check that it's maybe he made a mistake. Maybe there's something you can exploit. And KSO is curious about my Norwegian settings in chess.com, and trekkgjentagelse caught his attention, and that is the Norwegian word for move repetition. Move repetition is trekkgjentagelse. That is the Norwegian lesson of the day. Okay, Fress decided to go e6, and now e3 from Stuvik Holm. This is interesting because now this bishop is nearly trapped. I think Fress is going to be very tempted to go f6 and try to say that this bishop doesn't have any escape squares. But on the other hand, if f6, then g4 creates an escape for the bishop on g3. No, so he goes back to this plan I mentioned, rook b5, threatening the pawn on b2. And it seems like white needs to go rook d2 to protect that pawn. And after rook d2, we have some tempting options. Maybe we can go a4, and then put the knight, try to get the knight to b3. Maybe. Or maybe this is very clever from Fress. After rook d2, he has removed the rook from the d5 square. Maybe he's considering rook d2 takes on f3, takes back g5, trapping the bishop on f4. But I don't really see that working. Because after g5, then you have a4, and you can kick out the rook, and the rook kind of needs to stay put to defend the pawn on g5. But the time management, we got to keep that in mind as well. The time management is not great for Stuvik Holm. Getug suspects a lot of computer usage. 10-minute games is too easy to cheat. Yeah, but at the same time, they're doing a lot of work to avoid the cheating and to detect cheating. And the consequences of cheating are reasonably severe. So I trust that chess.com is doing their very best to keep the league fair. And now this knight e5 move. That's interesting. But it's very committal. So trades on g2. Black can take this pawn. Black can take... this is clever. Probably... I don't think Stuvik Holm accounted for that move. Bishop takes e5, giving away the bishop just to keep the knight on c6, which is blocking the rook on the c file. And now he's ready to take on b2. And we could get a really strange situation here with black being a pawn up if he takes on b2, but white having a very good bishop close to the black king. And Queen Elizabeth IV is wondering, why is Hammer not playing, and how does the team choose their players for the week? That is a good question. Basically, the week starts out with me asking all the good players, are you available? And to my mind, the three best players we have is Carlsen, it's Fressinet, and it's Aryan Tari. So this is the first week that we have a full lineup of our very best players. And when everybody says yes, I go, that is excellent. And we have the team. And then other times people are at tournament and unavailable for other reasons. And that's when you have to do logistics, making sure that you have a decent team for this week's game. Anonymous thinks that, yeah, Kaasen, he's pretty good. One of your best players? I don't know about that. Yeah, he's decent. But I decided to give him another chance, having made 4 out of 4 in his first outing. So as long as he makes 4 out of 4, I think I'll give him another chance. Fair enough, says Anonymous. Yeah, As long as he keeps making 4 out of 4, he's allowed to play on the team. We have Fressinet spending a lot of time. So he took the bishop on e5, thinking that getting that bishop into f6 would be serious, considering the weaknesses of the black squares around the black king. And now taking on b2, there's rook d7. And white is hoping to make some kind of attack along the 7th rank. And I thought maybe that could be thwarted by going up with the pawn. But Fress is giving up the pawn on c7 in order to exchange rooks. So now there's only one pair of rooks on the board, which means it's not so scary anymore. There's attack along the 7th rank. So with no rooks to double on the 7th rank, Fress is not scared about that. But on the other hand, how is he going to win this game? It's a rook ending with equal amount of pawns. And it's not clear if he can ever make progress. He goes rook b3, but the problem is whenever he takes on a3, white can take on b5, when it should be pretty much a draw. And this h4 move is a good one. Getting your pawn in the corner, push it forward, making sure that it gets exchanged off at some point. How to win? Probably Fress will have to take the pawn on a3 and then go rook a2, pressuring against the f2 pawn. The question is whether he should do that now or if he should do that after having played h5. The thing is, if black goes h5 here, then he has to consider the possibility of the white king infiltrating along these black squares on the king's side. And we have a confirmed result. Confirmed result with Frode Urkedal beating Elham Abdrlauf in the final other game still going on. So this is the final game of the first round. We have Fressinet with the black pieces trying to do something against Kristian Stuvik Holm in a equal rook ending. And if this game is a draw, the first matchup is a 2-2 tie. So right now it's 1.5, 1.5. Perpetual stalemate asks, is Laurent pushing for a win with black? Yes, definitely. Black is the one trying to push here. He has the passed pawn. So he's not a pawn up, but he does have a passed pawn, which his opponent does not have. So he is the one pushing for a win. How he's going to manage to do that is beyond me, because this pawn cannot go further forward because it needs protection from the rook. So as long as white keeps his rook here, I don't think there's any way for black to make progress. This is interesting. h5, h5. So Fressinet is thinking I can try to attack this one. So Fress is thinking about going with the rook after this pawn. And I think he's going to do it now. I think this is the only chance he has. He's going to go rook b4 and then he's going to try to take the h4 pawn. It's still close to nothing, but I think it's the only way he can create some trouble for his opponent. So he has gone rook b4, and now there's a big decision for white. Does he take on a3 or does he do something to protect the pawn on here? Okay, king g3. That's interesting, because now I thought rook g4, but then the king just goes in the corner. And if you play rook g4, there's no way of protecting the pawn on a3 on the next move. So Fress goes back, Stuvik Holm goes back. I don't think there's any way to make progress here. I think this is going to be a draw in the rook ending. Okay, no draw. No draw for a Norwegian player. The French guy is going for it, and he's played f6. And that is a very risky move. That is a risky move, because now you undouble the white pawns and you have opened the possibility of losing this game. So this pawn on e5 is now a weakness. And Fress pulls the emergency brake, going rook b4, rook takes h4. Another draw offer, and it's agreed. It is agreed. So there's the final draw between the Trolls and the Gnomes. The first round has it at 2-2. 2-2 after the first 4 games. We will have the next round in 8 minutes. And thank you to Jonas Leideland for subscribing. Who's playing for the Gnomes? Asks Anders Bolt. Today we have a star-studded lineup. We have world champion Magnus Carlsen. We have second to the world champion, the helper, opening helper, Laurent Fressinet of France. We have the world junior champion, Aryan Tari. And finally we have Elham Abdrlauf, our 13-year-old whiz kid, ruling the Oslo speed chess circuit. Close match so far, says Santiago. Yeah, it's very, very close. Too close, maybe, I would say, as the Gnomes team captain. It's going to be tough. Every single game will be hard fought. How long break do we have till the next round? We have 7 minutes. The next round will start at 6:10 local time. So 7 more minutes until the next game. Fishing Moby asks, you're still higher rated than Tari, aren't you? Yeah, I am higher rated than Aryan. But it's easier to market Aryan. He is the world junior champion. It just rolls off your tongue. And it's a point I will keep on making. Alex has seen an 1800 rated kid in the under 250, 1250 group. Do you know him? I don't know. I need a name to be able to answer whether I know him or not. Come on, chess bras, says, yeah, baby. Yeah, chess bras are coming up, but later tonight. I think they're playing at about midnight. 6 more hours for some chess bra action. And you might as well cheer for the Gnomes in the meantime. But that is just my opinion. Completely unbiased opinion. Chess bra in the house. Maybe we had a host. And thank you to Janne for subscribing. All of these chess bra stuff. I want to join the fun. I'm going to do some hammer times to kind of counter all the chess bra emote action in the chat. When is the next one, asks Aryan. Which means I should probably answer him on the team chat. I may have started an emote war I am not equipped to win. I was not equipped to win that emote war. I regret already starting it, or maybe even not starting, but rehashing. Axe Villager has a problem filling the time. He asks, what is your favorite song and artist group? I'm not sure I should be telling that. Because people, whenever I say what I think is good music, people have a tendency of going, and I don't like that. But yeah, some Coldplay, Robbie Williams, Shania Twain. I really like Marina and the Diamonds. And Grogger in the chat goes, ha 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 ha. Okay, we're ready. Muffle reminds me in the chat, could you put the score on the screen, please? I should do that. And we talked about this the last week, that I would do it. And I completely forgot. And I'm not sure how to do it on the fly. No, I'm not even gonna try. I think if I start doing technical stuff in the middle of a stream, it's not gonna be, it's not gonna have a good outcome. Alex is requesting hand and brain videos with Norwegian top players. I'll keep that in mind. And the Canadian crowd goes crazy at the mention of Shania Twain. I should have expected that, of course. We're getting a lot of Canadian support for Shania Twain. Muffles suggest I should write the score on my cheeks. Yeah, even if I had a magic marker, I'm not sure I would do that. Jugert is asking, who would you trade away first? Ask the manager. Ask the manager, I would just say that I love all my players equally. All my players equally. Big Joa asks, are you using OBS? No, I'm on XSplit. XSplit. So if you know how to create some text on an XSplit, I'd be happy to figure out somehow to make the score. Ramos is not happy with my I love all my players equally statement. He expected a bit more. A bit less diplomacy, I think. But for the team captain, you have to be diplomatic. All players equally. A very common lie, says Tommy Shelby. Yeah, that is true. That is true. Asageti is saying that the team is so good, I should trade Magnus to give other people a chance. Okay, we're off with the next round. And Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces has played A3. A3 from Magnus Carlsen. I'm not sure that's going to be the most useful move I've seen. After G6, he goes H4. Trying to go H5 and pressure the pawn on G6. And now he's completely changed his mind, going E4, and suddenly it's a Sicilian opening. He's trying to make sense of the A3 move by going bishop C4, and now the bishop can hide on A2. I'm not sure the inclusion of H4, H5 is going to be good for white. I think probably the weakening of the G4 square is more significant than the weakening of the G5 square. But that's a difficult thing to kind of to figure out, which is more important. And I think had he gone E6 here, Magnus would be tempted to play B4 as a gambit. So D6 from black, I expect he will go E6 and knight E7. And knight G5. So Magnus is trying to exploit the fact that he has this G5 square and it's impossible to chase out the knight with the pawn to h6. So he's just gonna put his knight on g5 and leave it there. And now this knight e7, I don't think that was a good move, because now black has trouble castling. You can never castle, because then g4 is gonna hit you real bad. Knight d4, knight e2. So Magnus is intending c3 next, taking control over some central squares. This has been a highly unorthodox opening, but I would say it's a success for Magnus so far. I think Magnus has good control over the center. He has the knight on g5, which is doing pretty well. Yeah, I'm actually liking white's position now. That's definitely a troll opening, says Banjo Snorkel. He's so ruthless, says Jungle Rundle. Yeah, Magnus is trolling the trolls right now. And this knight f4 move is very good, because he moves the knight away from being exchanged. It's in an attacking position. And also he threatens c3 on the next move, trapping the knight on d4. Things have gone really, really bad for Kristian Stuvik Holm. I think black is in massive trouble right now. c3 chasing the knight back. Then, I don't know, f3 maybe? f3, bishop e3. I want to go bishop e3 first, but I'm concerned about knight to g4. So that's why I suggested f3. Maybe even b4. Maybe even b4. Okay, so white has better placed pieces and better control over the center, and hopes of getting even more better center in playing d4, attacking the knight. So Magnus does go f3. This is a preparation move for bishop e3, and bishop e3 is a preparation for going d4. And I think if Magnus now manages bishop e3 and d4, black is just getting squeezed. He's being pushed back by the world champion, and I don't see what he can do about it. Okay, queen b6, so he's trying to attack on b2 to decentivize the bishop e3 move. Anton is asking, your phone rang? No. Is there some settings I haven't been using? Actually, my phone may have gotten an alert because there was some activity in the team chat. I'll try put it away. I thought I had it on silent. The score after the first round is 2-2. Ah, it's not a reference to me, it's a reference to Eilertsen, who missed out on the first round action, having to take a phone call. That's too bad. And then I do wholeheartedly agree with Anton. You really should teach people to text when you're following the crucial Norwegian derby in the Pro Chess League. And so far it's a very evenly matched match. You cannot say that. How should I say it? While I figure out how to say evenly matched in a more grammatically pleasing way, we will take a look at Laurent Fressinet, the French attack dog we have for this round. He has lost the bishop pair. He has one less pawn in the center than his opponent, but his opponent does have a weakened pawn structure. So the long-term advantages, I would say, is with black because of the bishop pair, because of this extra pawn in the center, this e6 pawn. So I feel like white needs to do something pretty soon to justify that he has given away those pieces. Maybe something like bishop e3 and then having a rook to the d file attacking the queen on d6. No, he goes rook on the d file first. I approve. I think chasing the queen while taking the open file, that seems like a smart idea to me. Evenly matched contest, says the king of mice or the king of corn. Yeah, no, I like that one. It's an evenly matched contest so far. I think that's okay. So apparently our French merc is having to think a bit about how to justify the loss of the bishop pair. We'll go back to Magnus to see how his progress is going with the very unorthodox opening. And now I actually think Magnus is planning to castle. I think if the queen goes back to b6, attacking on b2, I think Magnus is seriously considering to go queenside castles. But yeah, Stuvik Holm is still thinking. So let's move to Aryan. Aryan with the black pieces. He's playing the #1 Norwegian on the other team. And they have a weird pawn structure. But look at this army of white pawns in the center. That looks really dangerous to me. It feels to me like white is doing some attacking and it's going pretty well. I would like to see black challenge those pawns. So maybe c5, but then if the guy just takes your pawn, you're a pawn down. So maybe rook c8 and then c5, trying to counter white in the center. Okay, a5 from Tari. He wants to kick the bishop out from the diagonal where it's pointing down toward the black king. Yes, I can see why that was tempting. And the question now, I think, is how is white continuing this attack? So I think something like king h1, a4, bishop c8. I think black is planning to go f5 at some moment, trying to block the position. And black may feel like it's necessary to go f5 just to prevent white from going f5. So that would actually be a very interesting gambit right here, right now. If you went f5 and just started opening up stuff for your bishop. Okay, so king h1 was played, a4, bishop back. If now f5, then e5 pushes the knight away and also maybe drops the pawn on b7. So I'm not sure f5 is a good move here. But on the other hand, I don't see what else black could do. Maybe queen c6, trying to put the queen on the same diagonal as the queen and king. But the thing is, even if you kick the bishop away from this diagonal, now the bishop is on this diagonal. And on that diagonal, it's helping out trying to play f5. So I think to me, this looks like a very dangerous position for black. Perpetual Stalemate asks, isn't Frodo? In English, we have a tendency of calling him Frodo, because English-speaking people have a bit of an issue with Frode. You pronounce the E. So isn't Frode a GM? Yes, he is a grandmaster, but probably his chess.com account has been inactive, and he hasn't kind of informed the server that he became a grandmaster. So that's my guess, that it's just a bureaucratic issue of informing chess.com that he made his grandmaster title. And it's actually a long time ago he made it. So so probably he hasn't been using his account for some time. DJ Ramos asks, for how long has Magnus been ranked #1? Magnus has been number one for, I think, 9 consecutive years. It's completely insane. He has been number one for such a long time. And he's managed to keep everyone at a safe distance for that entire time. Terra Shock is asking about Norwegian pronunciation. I'm going to have to let other people deal with that. That's going to be too complicated a topic for me to do on the fly. Liam asks, does your personality change a bit when speaking English? Possibly, I don't know. I think people who have watched me speak Norwegian, I guess those are the people you should ask that question. Shepard says that Magnus has been number one for 7 years, since 2011. Okay, but he made the number one spot in 2009, but maybe he didn't manage to keep it consecutively for that entire time. This is a very big decision by White, going e5. He's actually giving up on this amazing f5 square. I think that was a positional mistake. It has to be, right? And now knight c4 is probably a good move from Aryan. I like this decision. The pawns are kind of stuck now. Maybe he's going for the sacrifice. Maybe he's going for the piece sacrifice with f5. That would be very interesting. I'm going to take a look at the other games, but this one is definitely one of the most unbalanced and difficult to assess positions I have seen for some time. Okay, let's see. Magnus has gotten his king into safety. He got his bishop to e3, and he's all ready to go with the pawn to d4. That is basically his plan for the last more than 10 moves. And now I think he's ready to do it. And when he does it, he's going to kick out the black knight on e5, gradually forcing his opponent's pieces backward. I think Magnus has executed this game very well so far. Anton asks, who did you choose in fantasy chess for this division? I chose 3 gnomes. So for my fantasy team today, I have Magnus Carlsen, Laurent Fressinet, and I also have Aryan Tari. For the 4th board, I thought that was a very difficult pick. On the 4th board, I have the Armenian guy, but I cannot remember his name. Manusyan something. Manusyan. All the Armenian names end with a yan. So something with Manyan from Armenia. That is my 4th board pick. Anders asks, which graphical software do you use for analyzing games in the big window? I'm just on the chess.com live server. So when I do the arrows, it's just the arrows the live server allows me to make. Okay, this is interesting. Magnus has given up his bishop. Magnus has given up his bishop. That's a big decision right there. And now he's coming with the rook. I think he's saying that rook c7 is such a powerful move that I'm willing to give up my very good bishop just to get that rook c7 move. That's interesting. Because the white bishop was very good. So giving it away is a big decision. Ambitious asks, I remember you won against Kaasen in Stavanger. Was it your only win in an official game with standard time control? No, actually I beat Magnus in the Norwegian Under 11 Championship in 2000. it was a weird time control, but it was more than 90 minutes, I think. I think it was like 2 hours for 60 moves. So technically that was a standard time control. So technically that's also a win I have against Magnus from when we were both 10. In my defense, Magnus was still a beast when he was 10 years old. So it was an accomplishment even back then. Complex agrees. Under 11, that totally counts. Totally counts. Yeah, there may have been some irony. Oh, peace sacrifice. Peace sacrifice from Magnus Carlsen. He's coming with everything he's got. So he's really saying that this rook on c7 is so crucial. I'm willing to give up my light squared bishop for it. And now Magnus is threatening queen takes g6. There's no way of stopping the pin along the 7th rank. What are the options for Stuvik Holm? Maybe there's not a lot of options. And this is looking really, really good for Magnus. This is looking like an absolute brilliant idea. I think Magnus, for the second week in a row, he might be up for move of the week, because that was a very impressive, this might even be game of the week. The entire way he has conducted this game has been very good, and giving up his bishop to create the attack and crowning the attack with that piece sacrifice, this might be game of the week. Very well executed by Magnus Carlsen. Very well executed. And it looks like Stuvik Holm has to think about this. He has a lot of stuff to think about, but I think no matter what he chooses, he's toast. There's no saving this stuff. His rook and bishop never got into the game. They're just spectators to Magnus Carlsen attacking on the other side of the board. And also this queen not doing its best job over there. It's not really contributing in the defense of the Black King. This is a very well executed attack by Magnus Carlsen. Oh, King f6. What a move. It's checkmate. Queen takes g6. It's checkmate in 2 moves. Queen takes g6. That's going to be move of the week. Is it possible for a game to win move of the week and game of the week in the same? Queen takes g6. That is such a nice finish. He cannot miss that move. Queen takes g6. No! No! Are you kidding me? That would have been such a sweet finish. I mean, he's still gonna win the game, but that was checkmate in 2 moves. And it was the cutest finish you could possibly create. To me, it feels like Stuvik Holm was just offering Magnus, okay, I have lost this game. I will let you finish in style. And Magnus has turned him down. Wow. Queen takes g6. That would have been such a spectacular checkmate. Anonymous asks, wouldn't the knight take the queen on g6? Yeah, so let's go back. Let's go back. He could have played... I'm having trouble going back when the game is still in progress. I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go back to that when the game finishes, which is now. And we're going to go back. And we're going to look at this position after king f6. He could have played queen takes g6. And after knight takes g6, there's knight takes h5, checkmate. Knight takes h5, checkmate. That would have been a spectacular finish to a spectacular game. I cannot believe he missed that. I'm actually gonna ask him. I have to ask him, because it feels like something he would do. Yeah, Magnus missed queen takes g6. But I mean, he still won the game. It was still a very nice attacking game. But he missed queen takes g6 for the sweetest finish. Tommy is suggesting kicking Carlsen off the team. I don't know. It seems a bit rash to kick the guy who has a 6 out of 6 score off the team. I think I would very much like him to stay. And Fressinet has an opposite colored bishop endgame. But it's not clear to me that he's gonna achieve much here. I think he needs to go c4. I think that's the only way for him to play. c4, rook takes e5, rook d7, king f6. And it's a very unclear rook endgame. But if he doesn't go for that, then black will play rook d8 and every rook will be traded on the e file. So Fressinet goes c4 and will get a rook ending with unclear consequences in this game. So rook takes e5 and then rook e2. And black has a lot of counterplay in that position. Let's go to Aryan Tari. Aryan Tari is... This is a very interesting pawn structure, and it has been interesting the entire game. I'm still not sure what's going on. Bishop attacks rook. I'm guessing rook goes to f8. Thank you to Anonymous for subscribing. DJ Ramos asks, when do you play again? Well, I will play when I need to play. When my players are unavailable, the captain will step in and make sure we do not get a forfeit loss. But other than that, I'm gonna want to do commentary for you guys. Bishop f6. I'm gonna say Aryan is still in trouble. I think, look at these white pieces all pointing toward the black king. I'm going to say Aryan is in trouble, and I'm going to take that back. Bishop takes d5. There was a threat of knight takes here and knight takes here. So after bishop takes d5, I'm changing my mind. Here, black is better. No, maybe. It's still difficult to say. Very complicated position. Chances for both sides. Bishop g5. I do not like that move either. Just take the bishop. Take the bishop and maybe go a3. a3. Take the bishop and a3. I think Frode has lost control of the position. And now I think there's chances for Aryan to get start attacking of his own. So far this has been a defensive game for Aryan. White had the aggressive pawns in the center. White had the bishop pair. White had the open file against the black king. But as we exchange some minor pieces, I think this might get a good outcome for the Gnomes. Leapers asks, do you think there should be a title above the GM title? It's an interesting question. Because there are so many GMs now that you could make the case that it's not as special as it once was. But at the same time, I'm a bit of a believer in tradition. So I do not think we should change it, simply because being a chess grandmaster is already it's a standing that has cultural significance in terms of people know what a chess grandmaster is. Okay, so Aryan is still worse in this game actually, but I think he's defending very well. And this c5 move is a typical let's try to trick my opponent move. And I'm liking it. I'm liking it. This could go either way because Frode is getting low on time. And thank you to Snaiman for subscribing. Let me brag, brah, is questioning whether it's okay to show the Carlsen Stuvik Holm game to his little brother, to his kid brother, because he feels that that game should have a PG-18 limit. No showing the vicious attacking chess of Magnus Carlsen to youngsters. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's your brother, so you're the best one. You're best suited to make the assessment whether he can cope with the brilliant attacking play of Magnus Carlsen. Okay, Elham has lost his game, so yeah, he was a piece down. Very early. He sacrificed. Elham sacrificed a piece in the opening. But unfortunately, it never really resulted in an attack. And this is actually a very good illustration of how 3 pawns is often not good enough for a piece. So even with 3 pawns for a piece, he was crushed by the white rooks on the open files. So I'll go back to Aryan. Aryan is on the attack. Aryan has a passed pawn. He has 2 passed pawns on the D file. I think Aryan could win this. Aryan could win this. This is very dangerous for both players. But B7 now I think is the best way trying to make a draw, because you really need to get the king into play. So white needs to go king f3 now, and he's done so. King d6, going for the pawn on b7. How is this gonna go? It's difficult to say. Probably king f4. King f4 possible move. Now king c5, very tempting. King c5 is tempting. But then a3. a3 is a good move. Maybe Aryan should have gone a3 himself. Yes, Aryan should have gone a3 himself, because now, yeah, but maybe king c6. Yeah, but now he takes on d4 first and then takes on a4, because with the rook on a4, he protects the pawn on a3. So now I think this is going to be a draw. I think Aryan was in trouble and ended up getting a position he was trying to win. Aryan was actually reasonably close to winning this game after being in some trouble during. We're gonna check out the last game. It's Fressinet, our French hunk, playing against Kaasen, and I think bishop c5 looks like a very good move. Bishop c5. Okay, bishop d8. King moves. King moves, and then bishop g5. Bishop g5 threatening bishop h4. But the threat is the same, threatening rook d8 check followed by rook d7 check. And then I would be attacking both the bishop and the king at the same time. So the question is whether this bishop on b7 might be just trapped. The bishop is trapped on b7. I don't think the bishop is going to survive. I don't see how that bishop can get back into play. I can't see it. I think the bishop is trapped on b7 and Fressinet is going to win this game. How many rounds today, asks Kregoth. And today we will have 4 games per player and 16 games total. So it's 4 rounds in which everyone on the Oslo Troll team plays everyone on the Oslo Gnomes team. And Fress is really low on time, but if he goes with the rook to a8, he's going to trap his opponent's bishop. Really low on time. Fress down to 10 seconds. I didn't even notice that. But he has trapped his opponent's bishop, and the bishop will sacrifice itself on c4. And then we will have a situation with bishop against 2 pawns, but with the white king stuck on along the first rank. So black really needs to sacrifice his bishop. Pre-move by Fressinet. And now he's chasing the king away. That is a very good move by Fressinet. Going after the e6 pawn. I think that was a good decision. Good decision. I'm not sure what happens if king g8 or king f8. King f8, maybe get the bishop in. Play bishop e7. I like that move. No, rook a6. Going after the c6 pawn. What happens if black just runs his? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Rook a3. I do not understand that move. Yeah, yeah. That move was Greek to me. Now white managed to get his king up from the first rank. White managed to get 2 pawns. He has a passed pawn of his own on the c file. And now on the next move he's going to go rook a7. King here? I'm not sure I like that move. I wanted to keep my pawn. Okay, but it's still... check. And take this pawn. That's going to be enough. And then we go after this pawn. And he even got the rook. That's going to be enough. Fressinet has won for the Norway Gnomes. We have 1 game remaining. It's Tari with the black pieces against Urkedal. It's a rook ending with a pawn each. Probably going to be a draw. But both players are very low on time. King h2, king c5. Both kings are assisting their pawn, forcing their opponent. Go g2, g2. If Aryan can take this one, it would be huge. No. So both players are forced to... Taking with the rook? That's very strange. Just take the pawn. You're not going to win this. I don't think you're going to win this, Aryan. Even if you get 3 more moves, I don't think you're going to win this. Yeah. So it ended up with both rooks having to sacrifice itself on the last pawn of the opponent. And it's a draw. So it's still a very tight match. Still a very tight match. The Gnomes are up 4.5 to 3.5. Very evenly matched. Kregoth says Carlsen will carry the Gnomes today. Every time Carlsen plays, he's just such a huge player for the team. And so far, he has 6 points out of 6 games. That is a perfect score. Big Joa says, I can add basic text by adding source, but you should get some nice graphics for the next one. Okay, so I will do a I will do some text. Source text. Ooh, that's ugly. Ah, and I misclicked. Ah, and this is where I change it, right? So let's go 4.5, 3.5, and let's make it a bit smaller. A bit smaller. Where's the size? Font, outline, size, opacity. Is that size? No. Seriously, I cannot find the size. Oh, technical stuff. It's not my friend. I seriously can't find the size. Jon Ludvig, the computer geek. Anything but. Normally I know how to use a computer, but if I were to start fiddling inside it, I would be so lost, so lost. Resize like it was a window. That is the smartest thing I've heard all day. Resize it as if it was a window. That is, we have some really tech savvy people in the chat today. Shout out to Aryan. So let's resize, and it's 4.5, 3.5. Such a genius. Aryan getting a lot of shout outs in the chat for that technical input. And trying with some words of encouragement in the team chat. Calculated Potato is really obsessed with the London system. I have noticed a lot of London questions coming from you. I think the London opening is pretty good. The London system is pretty good, but it's, yeah. I mean, Magnus is winning a lot of very nice games in the London system. I think it can be used by anybody. I even tried to play it once myself. That didn't work out very well. Okay, we have a new round. We have Aryan Tari against Fredrik Kaasen. We have Elham Abdrlauf with the white pieces against Kristian Stuvik Holm. We have Fressinet with black against Urkedal. That's going to be a tricky one. And we have Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces against Roeland Pruijssers. And Magnus is apparently not at his computer because the time has started. And yet I'm not too worried because he's been playing so fast all the games. So I think he can spare the 20 seconds he gave away there. And we have an Italian opening from the Dutch Grandmaster Pruijssers. The Jugert asks, do you think substitutions should be possible? No. Substitutions were allowed last season and they removed it, and I completely agree. I think it was way too much hassle without too much benefit. So I think you should, if you want to rotate your team, you should do so between the game rounds, not during the game rounds. Le Porc is saying that you do not have a soul if you play the London system. So you're saying that Magnus is soulless. I think that's a bit rough. And Distant Fire agrees with not allowing substitutions. The Pro League has pretty intricate rules. Is there some kind of handicap berserk? You could get an extra point for giving up a pawn or two. No berserking or handicaps here. This is just plain chess between two players. But the thing is that sometimes one team has a player that's better than the player on the other team. And that's how we're going to decide the Pro Chess League. Yusevic is asking, who is this Elham Abdrlauf? He scored a half point out of 8 games. Why do you keep him in your team? And the answer to that is that Elham is a 13-year-old kid from Oslo. And he already lost his game. Are you kidding me? Elham has already lost his game. Let's see what happened. Rook b1 is strange. So far, so good. Nothing's... Ooh! Mouse slip from Elham. That is such a tragedy. Mouse slip from Elham. That is rough. And as was mentioned in the comments, Elham hasn't gotten too many points. So getting this mouse slip loss is probably really going to hurt him. But the reason we play him is because we believe he's underrated. And we believe giving him these chances will be good for him. And it's going to be good for the team. And the team is not allowed to have an average rating above 2500. So having Elham and his 2000 rating allows us to use much stronger players on the other boards. So that is the explanation for having to vary the strength of our players. That one looks pretty painful, says Marius. Kid from Oslo playing against Oslo, says Shakerlacker. Yes, this is a derby. This is the Oslo Trolls against the Norway Gnomes. Both teams based in Oslo. So this is a really prestigious event in the Pro Chess League. Jungle Rundle says, I feel so bad for Elham. I hope he scores a point. And Vizgith is saying I should send a message of encouragement. Yeah, I should do that. So that is some encouragement for Elham. And Haikapekele, probably a Finnish guy, is saying that I'm sure Elham will get some confidence and experience, and there will be progress in his chess during this event. Yeah, I really think so. I really think that during the course of this league, I think even just for the knockout stages, I think he's going to be a stronger, better prepared player for it, having the experience from the preliminary rounds. What did you tell him? Says Milad Ibrahim. I told him that it's a mouse slip, it's a bad luck. It happens to everybody. And in the last round, he's playing against Fredrik Kaasen, the player who has lost both of his games so far. And to be honest, to focus on the chess right now, Fredrik is in trouble against Aryan as well. So Fredrik might have 3 losses by the time he plays against Elham, and then he will be he will also be disappointed about his results so far. I think this a5 move is very good from Aryan, creating weaknesses in the black squares of his opponent. And I think long term, I think this c5 square will be absolutely critical. And I think it's very likely that Aryan will manage to place a knight up to c4. So I'm going to go back to Magnus. And then we'll, in a couple of minutes, we'll see if Aryan has gotten that knight to c5. Kregoth asks, what is your favorite food? Carrots. For sure, carrots. Laurent is not doing well, says Iago Branco. That is interesting. Laurent in trouble. So let's see. Laurent is playing the black pieces of a King's Indian against Frode Urkedal. And it's a very, very complicated strategic position. And Laurent just decided to go g5, which is basically the doom of this bishop on g7. This bishop is now completely blocked by his own pawns. But on the other hand, with the blockaded position, he might have good chances to make a draw. So it's a fighting game here from Fressinet, and he's worse off. Making a draw here would be reasonably good for him. Carment is saying that you should smile more. Yeah, I'll try to do that, but right now the team is at a critical stage. It's a very critical stage. It's the last 8 games. And we're apparently worse with Fressinet having a complicated strategic duel against the number 5 Norwegian player, Frode Urkedal. Udai is saying that carrots I like raw. Yeah, of course. Not cooked. No, but you need to do carrots julienne or something, and then you just sweeten them in the pan, and it's really good. So you should never have them fully cooked. But they should be a little bit cooked is fine. But also just snacking on them raw is very good, of course. I'm happy to talk more about carrots. The Jugert is saying that we need to do a Norway Gnomes training camp made in 2 puzzles for Magnus Carlsen and mouse training for Elham. Yeah, no, but training camp sounds like a good idea. I mean, Gnomes training camp, that sounds like a blast. What happens in Magnus's game? Yeah, let's go see Magnus. So Magnus has a... I was going to say weird, but it's just a bad pawn structure. I think Magnus just has a bad pawn structure right here. Next move is probably not that one, but he's going to take on e5. And then he's going to have 4 pawn islands. And he's going to have 3 or 4 isolated pawns. So I'm not liking Magnus's position. But I'm a very... I kind of see the... I have a problem with the dynamics in chess. So I see that Magnus's pawns are not doing very well. But on the other hand, maybe he could create some kind of pressure really fast. Because after he takes on d5, or on e5 I mean, the queen is putting some pressure on the b2 pawn. And he can go with his rook to the d file, maybe pressure the white queen. But yeah, I don't really see it. To me, it feels like Magnus is worse here. And I think the confirmation of that is just that he's thinking. So I think Magnus is considering something like queen c5. No, but then the knight is hanging. So he's taken back on e5. And now he has this really poor pawn structure. With every color of this pawn is a different pawn island, right? So one pawn island is when pawns are connected, sitting next to each other. And the fact that he has 4 pawn islands, that's the worst you can have in chess. And I do not like his pawn structure. But on the other hand, he has reasonably active pieces. And white will probably need to go b3 in order to protect the pawn on b2. So maybe if we find some move that's very strong or restricts white from playing b3, maybe he's okay. I don't know, maybe something like a5. a5 with the idea of going a5, b3, a4. Trying to open up yet another. Ah, no, but there's other problems as well. Queen c4. Queen c4 is a good move. Queen c4 attacking e6. Yeah, this might actually be the first game in the entire Pro Chess League where Magnus is in trouble. Awful Hangover says that Unischuk missed mate in 1. But it doesn't really matter. As long as he won the game, missing mate in 1 doesn't really matter. Magnus missing mate in 2, I mean, who cares? He won the game. And it was a very nice attacking game. So, unless Unischuk actually managed to lose his game, I don't think it matters too much. Okay, so b3 is played. And now the question is, can Magnus do something like queen d4, maybe bishop b4, something along those lines? Queen d4, bishop d2, b2. Yeah, I'm really not liking Magnus's position. Ooh! Awful Hangover says that Unischuk missed mate in 1. Not that Unischuk could have made the mate. He got mated. Unischuk got mated by a 2200 after missing a mate in 1. Okay, now I understand what you're saying. And that is shocking. That is shocking. Ah, but he was lost anyhow. But it's still pretty surprising. Unischuk losing against the 2200. Yeah, who was he playing? Because do I have this guy on, or girl in my fantasy team? Was the Estonian horses playing the Armenian team? I'm really hoping so. Because I have the Armenian 4th board player. Okay, Magnus has gone queen d4, attacking the knight, also putting pressure on the pawn on e4. The question is, what is he planning after bishop b2? What is he planning after bishop b2? Probably he needs to go queen d2. So I'm thinking bishop d2, queen d2. Yeah, Magnus goes queen d2. But now there's many good moves. Maybe rook e1, maybe queen c4. Not rook f2. So white should not play rook f2 because then Magnus is doing some tactics with knight to g4. But other than that, it feels like maybe not rook e1, because if rook e1, Magnus can take on e2, and then we have another example of this knight g4 tactic attacking a rook along the f file. Wow! Massive information from Goosebold. My fourth board fantasy team pick has beaten Solemn Saleh. Wow! Solemn is such a good blitz player. And that is a huge upset. So I'm feeling good about my fantasy picks. Let's check in on another one of my fantasy picks, namely Laurent Fressinet. And Fressinet is in trouble. Big trouble for Fressinet. The white knight is coming to f5, and from there it's attacking both on d6 and on h6. That is huge for the Oslo Trolls if they are able to defeat Laurent Fressinet. And there's many moves to consider here. Knight c4 attacks the bishop and also attacks the pawn on d6. Knight c4, knight f5. The white knights are coming, and that is bad news for the gnomes. Very bad news. I don't know how Fressinet is going to survive this. The bishop is under attack. The pawn is under attack. This is a losing position for Fressinet. Bishop back to c7, but now the next knight. Maybe knight f5. Maybe knight f5. If you want to play something safer, something that doesn't give up the e4 pawn, even f3, just defending the e4 pawn is a possibility. There's no way of stopping knight f5 next move anyhow. But the thing is that if white goes f3, then I go b5 and I kick the knight out. So I think probably white should go knight f5 and give up the pawn on e4 and then kick the knight and then take the d6 pawn. And that's going to open the position a little bit and still create lots of trouble for black. Awful hangover goes Fressinet, too weak, too slow. If anybody hasn't seen that video, it would astound me if anybody hasn't seen that video. But you might want to do a search on YouTube for Fressinet, too weak, too slow. Getting completely killed by Magnus Carlsen, playing 2 minutes against 1. The Jugard asks, will you abuse your position as the Gnomes manager to win the fantasy contest? How do you mean? Because the rules of the fantasy contest is that I cannot pick anybody on the opposing team when I'm a team member or team captain. So I cannot pick the players on the opposing team. This week I picked a lot of Gnomes players because I thought the Gnomes are going to do very well against the Trolls. So I don't see how I can abuse this. Okay, we're back into Magnus's game. Magnus he's not a pawn down. Magnus is not a pawn down, but it's hanging on e6. It's hanging on c6. So Magnus is probably fighting for a draw. But look at the time. Look at the time. Pruijssers down to 2 minutes 30 seconds on the clock. I think Magnus is going to try to win this. If I know Magnus like I think I know Magnus, I think he's going for the win. Even with this massively ugly pawn structure, he's going to try to win this game. As long as there's pawns still on the board, he's going to go for the win. Okay, that was an interesting decision by Pruijssers. Maybe knight f4 now. Knight d4. And now the check. Check on d7. Pruijssers is doing his best to remove the pawns in order to secure a draw against the world champion. I'm not afraid Magnus will lose this. I think there's absolutely no chance he will lose. And I think he's going to do his very best to keep as many pawns as possible alive and hope to go for the win. Check, king up to g6, keeping an eye on the h7 pawn. Another check, king up. Yeah, white is not making progress here, and Magnus can start h5 for Magnus now. h5, just getting the attack going. You can create a mating net with the pawn on h4 and the knight on g3. I think Pruijssers has not done a very good job of killing this, and basically he has allowed Magnus to get an active king and to get his pawn up into the attack. Knight d2 from Magnus, attacking on b3, but also having checkmate threats. Some ideas involving knight f3. Pruijssers is on the defensive now. I could really see Magnus winning this one. For instance, if rook e3, then knight f1 is a fork on the king and the rook, and that's a win. Check from Pruijssers. King f5, that's a good move. Still threatening the pawn on b3. But I think Magnus will want to play his pawn to h4, trying to create checkmate threats against the white king. I think Magnus cares more about checkmate than this pawn on b3. Magnus will win this, says Danish Bear. Maybe. It's still possible. Anything could happen. And Pruijssers is down to 30 seconds. 30 seconds for Pruijssers. And he's giving up the pawn. This was a good decision. Good decision by the Dutch Grandmaster. He's making sure that his king doesn't get trapped in a mating net. And he's using his active king to take the pawn on h5. So the question now is whether Magnus can use his a pawn to do something. Or maybe he can just go rook e2. Maybe rook e2 there for Magnus would have been a good move. Okay, Magnus goes rook a5, protecting the pawn on h5. And now bringing the knight back into play. Threatening rook e5. Ooh, knight here. Very tricky move. Checkmate going on. Checkmate. No. Yes. Checkmate. Yes. No. Yes, it's checkmate on h6. Checkmate on h6. That is a beautiful finish from Magnus. Checkmate on the next move. That was good use of active rook, active knight. And it's checkmate on the very next move. King g6, rook to h6, and it's a very sweet checkmate with the rook doing the finishing touches, with the king assisting as well, and the knight taking away some important squares. A very nice checkmate with, let's say, low material. That there was not a lot of material left on the board. Creating a checkmate under those circumstances is not an easy thing to do. Very well done by Magnus Carlsen. And I have ignored the game between Tari and Kaasen, But Aryan Tari, as I said in the opening, I really liked his position, and he has managed to win the game, which means we're left with Laurent Fressinet. Fressinet trying to make a draw for the Norway Gnomes to secure a 2-point lead into the last round. 2-point lead into the last round. Yeah, so I'm going to update the score. Right now it's 4 against 6. 6.5, 4.5, but with the Oslo Trolls having a very good position on the final board. Frode Urkedal has played a very good King's Indian defense, and his knight on f5 is such a monster. Monster knight on f5. So Fressinet will have to do some magic to come back from this. Perpetual stalemate. Magnus can't miss 2 mate in 2s in a row. Well, actually this was a mate in 3. So Magnus sees the mate in 3s but not the mate in 2s. Because that's the kind of guy he is. He doesn't like... He needs some challenges when he's making brilliant moves. Asageti asks what happened in Elham's game. Elham had a big mishap. He made a mouse slip. Elham made a mouse slip, losing the game in the opening. It was like 14 moves. Okay, after a very long think, Fress plays rook b3. And the big question now is what happens if the knight takes on d6. Okay, Frodo has decided not to play that move. He goes king e8, which is a measure, I think, against black going a3 on the next move. So now there's a possibility of rook takes f3. Rook takes f3 is a possibility. But then white is probably ready to go with the knight, taking the pawn on d6. So what are you going to do? Maybe it's possible to go rook d8. But I think that rook endgame would be trouble as well. Okay, Fress goes for it. He takes on f3. Now I'm expecting knight takes d6. And I'm not really sure how he's going to get out of this. Bishop takes, knight d3, knight d3. Fress has a threat. Knight to b4 is threatened. And I think he's actually just going for the attack. Similar to what Magnus just did with very limited pieces left. I think that's what Fressinet is doing. I think he's trying to checkmate white with a rook, 2 rooks and a knight. And it might actually work. It might actually work. It's not easy with this move and this move both being threatened. And also there's a3 in some lines. Actually, this is tricky for both players. I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic right now because I really like this knight to d3 move. Putting pressure on the b2 pawn whilst also thinking about doing a fork on b4. Big fan of that move from Fressinet. Perpetual stalemate says that's what Fressinet thought for so long. He was calculating this attack. And king a1, king a1. That's a very strange move. Very strange move. I'm tempted to go a3. I really want to go a3. Try to open up the lines against the black king. a3 takes on a3. I need a follow-up. I need a follow-up. He has gone a3. I think he needs to take this pawn. And then maybe knight f2. I think knight f2 is the best I can do. That was funny. On knight c5. Knight c5. Knight c5 is much better. The rook cannot take it because it's checkmate. But what's so important about knight c5 is that in some lines you can go knight to b3 next. King a2. King a2 was a good move. That stopped the entire plan of what I was hoping would happen. Knight a4. Knight a4 and now rook b3. Rook b3 coming up. Yes! And if the rook goes to c7, it's checkmate in 2 moves. On knight c4. Knight c4 is a good defensive move. Very good defensive move. f6, just protect that. And now d6, just try to get a new queen. No, he goes rook to b1. Rook to b1. No! Fress exchanges. That was unfortunate. If he needed to exchange there, that meant his position was probably still bad. He's down to 15 seconds. Down to 15 seconds, and white has 2 passed pawns. I would say that white is almost definitely winning in this position. A knight d2 there, I think, would have been a winning move for white. Rook d3 prevents the knight d2 plan. But on the other hand, how do you stop this pawn on the a file? Rook d4, rook to c4, trying to force the exchange. Fress goes for the exchange. He goes for the exchange. I'm not sure what he's thinking. How do you stop these 2 pawns? Surely that's impossible. No, he's trying. He's going for it. Rook exchange. The king should come, chase the knight. It feels like this should still be winning for white, especially with the time advantage. And Fress goes crazy, gives up his pawn, and then he doesn't take the pawn back, goes into knight e3, and now the king is allowed to go to d4. c4, even better. Yes, this has been a very well executed game by Frode Urkedal. Maybe even this can win the Game of the Week award. It feels like he had things reasonably under control for the entire game. And now this pawn is just queening. It's just queening. It's a queen against a knight. And now queen a7. Queen a7 picks up the knight as well. Okay, not queen a7. But it's going to win anyhow. I think it's going to win, but now Fress is fighting. Let's get the new pawn. But it's check. Okay, Fressinet has resigned. Frode Urkedal is the winner. And it means that we have a very close match. Very close match going into the final weeks. The final games. And Yozova is unhappy about my pronunciation. In all fairness, everybody calls Frode for Frodo at tournaments. So I mean, he's kind of stuck with it. It's not a me thing. It's more of an international chess community thing. That's my excuse. Frodo takes the big win, and Cabo King is really happy about that. Apparently, it goes Norway Gnomes, Norwegian players, and then Laurent Fressinet in the chat. Perpetual Stalemate asks, wasn't knight c1 instead of knight c5 just winning? I'm going to look at that. Knight c1. Yeah, because we were discussing that. Where to put the knight. Where could we put the knight? Knight c1? No, that would not be a good move. Because then takes, check, but not checkmate. Because you have rook a2. So I think if there was any point where Fress was better, this was it. And when Frode managed to exchange off some pieces and pen the attack, then I think it's going on. The gnomes look better now than when Hammer was playing, says HMW Live. Yeah, no, somehow whenever Kaasen is on the team, we tend to do very well. I think there may be some sort of causal connection. But I mean, that's just me. I think the team might be performing better when Magnus is around. I'm gonna try to do an analysis of this position. Yeah, no, I'm not managing. I'm gonna turn it back off. Yeah, knight c1 takes, and it's not checkmate because you can stop it with rook c2. Porcelain says, are you doing commentary with Simon Agdestein again? Really loved the last time you guys did it. I'm sure that I will have, I think my chess commentating days are not over. And I feel pretty confident I will have the chance doing commentary with Simon again. Asageti is saying that my board 4 fantasy pick is 2.5 out of 3. So it's a major success for the Hammer fantasy team. Unfortunately, one of my other fantasy picks is Fressinet, and he just got beaten by Frode Urkedal. So Fressinet is at the moment my problem pick in the fantasy chess competition. There's fantasy chess, asks Calculated Potato. Yeah, definitely. There's fantasy chess. And I have some good news. I just got an email from Twitch that my Norway Gnomes emote has been approved. So in about 10 minutes, there's gonna be the Norway Gnomes emote ready for all subscribers in the channel. So the Norway Gnome emotes making its debut right at the appropriate time. Hopefully it's gonna be used to cheer on the victory in the Oslo derby. Hammer gets so hyped with his emotes, says Chessbay. Well, they're new to me, and it fascinates me how it's even possible to manage to make those little things. And I think the team at chess.com has done such a great job of helping me make my my emotes. Yeah, although that's spamming, I'm gonna soon stop spamming emotes. I'm not that proud of them. I think we should have a general rule: max 4 emotes per comment. We're following Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Frode Urkedal. And Magnus has played a very unorthodox opening. His first move was knight c3, then he followed up with knight f3. It is the knight's tango, but it's actually still a pretty decent position. Essentially, Magnus is playing a King's Indian reversed. So this is a well-known position with reversed colors, and how bad can it be having a solid black opening with an extra tempo? So this knight e5 for Magnus, it's starting actually to be very reminiscent of the earlier game between Fressinet and Stuvik Holm. So this is actually very similar to the Stuvik Holm game, but now knight d4. I think that's a pretty good move by Urkedal. I think that's a good move, because it asks a question to the bishop on f4. What are you doing here? And on the next move, I think if he's allowed, maybe do something like knight h5, trying to eliminate that bishop. Seems like a decent idea. Maybe Magnus can do something like e3, knight back to e6, and then g4. That would be very funky, which is, I think, essentially the style Magnus is going for in this Pro Chess League season. Okay, but he's gone queen d2. That's more, it looks like a pretty good move. Alex asks, can we spam the Norway Gnomes emote when it arrives? No spamming of Norway Gnomes emotes until we win. So we need to win the match before we start spamming the Norway Gnomes emote. And then I will give my approval. But no jinxing this match. It's an important match. The score is 6.5, 5.5. It's very evenly matched. So no jinxing the result with spamming the Norway Gnomes emote. And Omega asks, when will we get merchandise? I don't know. What would you be interested in? I actually broke one of my very nice porcelain mugs. So I considered actually buying some Norway Gnomes mugs. Cups. Teacups, essentially. Okay, so right now I'm looking at Elham with the black pieces against Fredrik Kaasen. I think white is a little bit better, but it's nothing major. Probably with black I would play c6, trying to bring this bishop alive. Hammer Time mugs or Norway Gnome mugs? Because I was going to buy Norway Gnome mugs. Chaoso asks, are there also unimportant matches? I mean, that's a fair point. I guess there are no unimportant matches, but it's rare that matches are so close as they are today. In the first week, we had already won the match before the last 4 games. And in the second week, we were 3 points behind, so we thought we have no chance of coming back. Mats asks, did you accidentally drop your porcelain mug in the wall after losing a chess game? Actually, no, it was an accident. But I have been known to break stuff losing chess games. I will not deny that part. And Hawks80 just subscribed. Thank you very much. You have some very nice Norway Gnomes emotes to look forward to. I'm going back to Magnus because I thought Frode actually had a very good opening. So even just winning this game is going to be tricky for the world champion. And now there's a lot of white pieces attacking the d4 pawn. How do you defend against that attack? I'm not so sure. I think the development has been pretty good for Magnus, having such a clear plan of action. And it has gotten Urkedal thinking. No, I'm not going to suggest that move. But I'm saying that this pawn is in danger. Perpetual stalemate is suggesting that, or maybe that isn't what you're suggesting, but are you saying that I should get hammer merchandise as actually selling real life hammers? Because that would be kind of funny. That would be funny. I'm not sure it's a good idea. I'm not sure it would sell, but it would be very, very funny. Mid king mid is, what is the most angry you've been about a chess game? I don't know about most angry, but I know the most expensive. The most expensive is when I lost a game of chess in Rapid, and I went out. We were playing in some kind of close to some farms and stuff, and so I went for a walk to calm down along the fields, and then I took my cell phone and I threw it as far as I could out onto the field, thinking that I will find it later. And well, long story short, I never found it, so it cost me a cell phone. It's not my proudest moment, but yeah, I have a temper at times. Hard Rain Chess is suggesting a new chess title above 2800 called MC, and then I would fight to become MC Hammer. Eilertsen would buy a Hammer Time Hammer. Could you call it, or was it on silent? No, the thing is, it was in the middle of winter, so it was also very snowy and not very easy to access the entire field. And yes, I do believe it was on silent. So yeah, it's a long time ago. Yeah, I kind of hope I didn't ruin the farmer's tools. I mean, you could easily imagine that the tractors and stuff would be affected by some cell phone lying there as spring came. But I think we're okay. I haven't heard of any cell phone related farm accidents. Talking about accidents, we should look at the game between Magnus and Frode, in which Magnus has won the d4 pawn, and I'm not sure anything bad happened. The big question was whether he could take this pawn without losing something, and the only bad thing going on at the moment is the black queen pointing towards the white king. But that can be parried. And for the moment, other than that, this pin is pretty annoying. White is a pawn up. White is a pawn up. Maybe something like bishop c3 and then go rook to e5, chasing the queen away. I think Magnus is just a pawn up. Thank you to our friend, the FCDK. I'm just calling you the Danish bear. Thank you so much for your donation. Yusevich asks, what money is involved in the Pro League? And the answer is, it could become pretty big if you make it to the top 2 teams. So the Norway Gnomes finished second last year, and we got a prize of $10,000. So there's a big second place. Thank you, Perpetual Stalemate, for subscribing. And there's a reason for the subscriber rush. We have the Norway Gnomes logo, the emote, in the chat. And no spamming of the emote until this match is won. Let's take a look at Aryan Tari with the black pieces. Aryan has had a pretty good stint on the third board. I think he made one draw, but other than that, he has won his games. And how to assess this position, I'm not sure. Let's count the pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so Aryan is probably worse. Aryan is probably worse. His opponent has the bishop pair, and also Aryan has doubled pawns on the e-file. But on the other hand, look at these central pawns. I mean, this is basically, Aryan has 3 central pawns, while his opponent has none. This is a very difficult position to assess. It's very difficult to say, even to say who is better. I mean, instinctively, I would take the bishop pair. But this bishop is being restricted by the pawn on e5. And this bishop is being restricted by the pawn on d5. So maybe I'm wrong, actually. Maybe I'm wrong. Aryan might be better. Aryan might be better, even though it's difficult to understand that from the first glance at the position. Our friend the Danish bear is not at all Danish. I got messed up with the DK bear, but actually it's football club Dynamo Kiev. The Danish bear is in fact a Ukrainian bear. And as we well know, the Ukrainian bears are much more dangerous than the Danish ones. So I'm going to stop calling you the Danish bear. And from now on, you're the Ukrainian bear. Oscar asks, why are your glasses so skewed? It's because I cannot get them to sit straight. Because they don't sit too well on my ears, so they kind of always fall down. So that's the problem with the glasses. Which football club do you support? Asks Udai. I'm pretty, I consider myself pretty neutral. I try to be neutral. I like the clubs that kind of seem to do pretty well. Kind of Moneyball style. And not spending too much money and selling players with a profit. I think well-run clubs are the best clubs. But I suppose in football there's not too many well-run clubs at the moment. Okay, we're going to go away from that game. We're going to take a look at Mr. Elham. And he's doing okay. He's doing okay. He has the bishop pair. He's a pawn down at the moment. But I'm not sure that's going to last. Because if he just takes on b5, he's going to win the pawn back. So taking on b5, he will get the pawn back. So Elham is having an interesting position. He's low on time compared to his opponent. But other than that, I think he's doing okay. Let me bag, brah, says, so you should be an Arsenal supporter. Yeah, actually, yeah, I really do like the continuity of Arsenal having the same manager for a long period of time. But at the same time, I do realize that all the Arsenal fans wants to get Wenger out as soon as possible. So there's that. Also, I guess they just spent some insane amount of money on Aubameyang. Let's take a look at Fressinet. Fressinet has not been having a good week. He has not been having a good week, but now he's a pawn up. Can he do something with an extra pawn? It's not entirely clear because the white pawn structure is so bad that the extra pawn might end up being irrelevant. I think black has a plan of putting his queen on c4 and his knight on d5. And that is such juicy squares. Really effective squares for your pieces. So Laurent is having a think. And I think with good reason. I think this is a tricky position. Even if he is a pawn up. I think it's a tricky position. It's not at all clear whether he's better. And if he starts drifting, he could easily become worse as the black pieces find their optimal squares. Super Bonanti Babonati asks, is it true that bishop h3 was the only winning move in the famous Shirov game? Yes, it is true. Bishop h3, I believe, was the only winning move. But now you're doing very advanced chess references. Actually, my first chess book about a player was Alexei. So Alexei Shirov, Fire on Board. That was my reading material as a 11-year-old. And to be fair, it has not rubbed off on my style. Fire on Board is not really how I play chess nowadays. The Jugend is asking the difficult questions. Are you more angry about Fress for losing this game for the Gnomes or for your fantasy team? And I think the answer to that is, if the Gnomes are winning their match anyhow, I'm going to be upset about my fantasy team. But for the moment, as long as the Gnomes win, that is the main priority. And I'm really not happy about this a4 move. This a4 move, I don't like it. Because now you put your pawn on a vulnerable square, while at the same time just provoking black into putting the queen on the square where the queen wanted to go anyhow. So actually, I think Fress, even though he's a pawn up, he needs to start defending. I think white could be worse in this position. I think white is worse, even with a pawn up. And Fress has spent 4 minutes for his last 2 moves. So he's still spending a lot of time. Let's go to Magnus. Magnus is our hero. He has won 7 out of 7 games for the Norway Gnomes so far this season. And he has a pawn up in this game. And he might go all the way to 8 out of 8. He might make it 8 out of 8. Rook e2. The thing is that Magnus is a pawn up, and also he has his queen in an aggressive position. So I think basically regardless what Magnus chooses to play here, he's going to win this game. Pro Dudu asks, I think the a5 follow-up is good. So let's just go back to the Fress game and explain why a5 is not a good idea. So Fress has played queen b7, giving up the pawn on a4 just to get the queen back into play. And that's why it was a big mistake playing a4, because he should have gone queen b7 here, and it would have taken black more time to get the a pawn. But anyhow, a5 would have been a mistake because of knight c6, threatening both the queen on a7 as well as the pawn on a5. So a5, knight c6 would have just been a fork. Actually, it's even worse. The queen might have gotten trapped on b7. So the queen really needed a rescue operation going. Maybe the queen still needs a rescue operation. Knight d5. Black is placing his pieces just where he wants them. And the white queen is unable to get back into play. I think Fress is in serious trouble. Magnus pawn up in the endgame. I expect Magnus to win with a pawn up in the endgame. Let's look at Elham. Elham did not take on b5, but he can do so on this move. Elham still has the opportunity to take on b5 and then take with the bishop on b2. So at the moment he's a pawn down, but he has some counter chances thanks to his bishop pair. Also, knight f4 is an interesting move, trying to attack the white queen. Knight f4 is, and also knight f4, then maybe you can go knight d3 later. Knight f4, I'm liking that move. Knight f4 from Elham. He is a pawn down, but I'm not too concerned about him being a pawn down. I'm more concerned about him being down to 3 minutes on the clock. I think his position is okay, but his time could cause trouble, so he should move a little bit quicker. And the final game, the game we haven't been studying much. Wow, we should have been at this game much more. Look at these pawns. Wow, that is an avalanche of black pawns coming, storming down the board. And white is trying to create some trouble around the black king, but I don't think he's successful. Yeah, takes, and now Aryan is just going to take back on f3. Just take back on f3, and this is going to be a win with the black pieces for Aryan Tari. Just take it back. Bishop takes, and then queen takes d3. And the pawn center was definitely not a bad thing for black. He's sitting there still with all these. Queen to a1. Queen to a1. Maybe that's even stronger. He checks first and then he takes, setting up bishop f4, catching the queen and the king on the same diagonal. That was actually even better than what I suggested. And now bishop f4 is checkmate. There's no way to, he has to go queen g3 to stop it. And that is a win for Aryan Tari with the black pieces. So the gnomes are up to 7.5. 7.5 for the gnomes. Magnus has won. We missed how he managed to win that, but let's go back. So he managed to open up the position with that extra pawn, and I think probably paired with the fact that Urkedal was low on time. Urkedal was trying to do something, and he got punished for it. Magnus came with his rook to attack the black pawns. And both ways, there's a pawn hanging on b5 as well. The Norway Gnomes have won the match. And the Norway Gnomes emote spamming in the chat has begun. The Norway Gnomes have defeated the Oslo Trolls. Because now we have 8.5 points. The only interesting thing now is Laurent Fressinet. Fressinet is doing a terrible job for my fantasy team so far, but we need him to make a draw here to rescue some fantasy points at least. So Fressinet, we're all reliant on you right now to create some points for our fantasy teams. I think the good thing is that a lot of people will have Fress on their team. So even if he had a bad week, I will not win the 10k first fantasy prize. But I may be up there with and Santiago is getting the Magnus emotes as well. The hero of the Norway Gnomes, Magnus Carlsen, having scored 8 out of 8 points. 8 out of 8. It's a perfect score for world champion Magnus Carlsen, and he once again has helped the Gnomes to a Pro Chess League victory. I think this decision from Fressinet to get the pawn on b5, I think that was a good one. I think that was a good decision from him. I think maybe now knight e5, trying to go knight c4 and exchange the knight for the bishop. Possible idea. Yeah, no, Fress is still in trouble. Still in trouble. This pawn is a weakness. Black will go with the rook attacking on... No, he goes rook a2, but it's the same idea. He wanted to go rook b2. And now rook b1 and king f8. And the king is coming. The king is coming to c4. And this will be a very difficult defensive task for Fressinet. And HMW Live is still trying to convince me to do the Civilization 5 stream. It may happen, but probably not in February. And I'm just doing some team chat issues, informing Mr. Fressinet that the team has already won the match, regardless of the result in his game. We're going to go to Elham. Elham has only 6 seconds left. 6 seconds left for Elham, but he has a drawish looking endgame with a pawn down. So Elham pawn down, but opposite colored bishops. Can he do something? Can he keep the blockade on the d6 square and make a draw? I think so. I think he can make a draw here. But he's very low on time. Down to 5 seconds on the clock. Very, very low on time. And now he's trying to maneuver the rook to d4. I think rook d4 is his intention. And then he's putting the bishop on c5. I don't think the bishop is very safe on c5 actually. I think rook b5 is gonna be bad news for Elham. Rook b5, and there's no way of keeping the blockade. He goes bishop d4. That's a very good move. And now bishop g1. And for the moment, he's keeping the blockade, although it became very difficult with the white bishop on c6. If he manages to defend this, I will be very, very impressed. Because at this point, it has become a dangerous... g5, that's a good move. Good undermining move. And also opening files on the other side of the board. Very well played by Elham now, the last couple of moves. And with so little time on the clock. But Kaasen is also doing a good job. King a6 and then maybe sacrifice the rook on b6. That's a clever idea. King a6. No, he goes rook d1. f6, I don't know. Maybe rook d6 would have been better. The pawn moves forward. Elham is going to take. He takes with the bishop. Interesting decision. He takes with the bishop intending to go to c7. But then I think the king is going to come. The king is coming here, chasing the bishop. Yeah, Kaasen has also played this very well. Now he's chasing the bishop, the only piece that was protecting the rook. And this construction... The fortress Elham tried to make, it wasn't a fortress, I guess is essentially what I'm saying. and he ended up losing the game. Good defensive try by Elham, but also very nice technique by Fredrik, getting the king up there into the attack. Could Carlsen beat Fischer at his best in a standard match? In my mind, there's no doubt. I really think that Magnus is the best chess player ever. I don't believe fortresses, says Cabo Kings, and that is a Magnus Carlsen quote. I do not believe in fortresses, and in this case he would be correct. It was no fortress what Elham had. And it's no fortress what Fressinet has either. Rook takes g2. And this is going to be a losing... No, wait, rook d... there's some tricky stuff going on right now. Rook f2, but now rook d7 check. Rook d7 check. I think Pruijssers maybe missed that move. Because now it's tricky. Now it's properly tricky. Rook to d8 and then maybe rook b2. I don't know what's going on. Rook c7 instead from Fressinet. And now he's going d5 probably. No, maybe he's just going rook c5. No, he goes d5. d5, maybe king f6. King f6 trying to keep the f7 pawn, making sure that the king still protects. Yeah, I think king f6, then Fress is going to play rook b7, I think. Rook b7. And Fress is down to seconds on the clock. 3 seconds for Fressinet. He gives another check, and he's planning to go back on the next move. Keep attacking the pawn on f7. This is a very exciting finish, mostly for my fantasy team. My fantasy team really needs Fress to make a draw here. And Pruijssers has gone to g6 with his king. And now the king is even further away. So now Fress goes rook b7, and there's d6 in the air, and he's avoiding the rook d4 check. At this point, I think Fress might play for a win. Let's go back. No, Pruijssers is playing for a win, but I think that's a mistake. I think Fress could try to win this. King e6, pawn up, king down, pawn. No, rook. That was very clever from Pruijssers. Pruijssers managed to get the pawn, but rook d6 would be a big mistake, but he doesn't go for it. He avoids the big mistake, Pruijssers. And now I think this is going to be winning. Yeah, this is winning for black, unfortunately. It's a winning rook endgame for... No! And then Fress got the opportunity to give away the pawn for the f-pawn, and now rook f3. Fress is back in it. But it's such a complicated position with so little time on the clock. Who knows what's going on? I have no idea. Fress is going to go back. King h4. He's going to take on g7. How is that position? Blocking on the e-file? That's not supposed to be enough, is it? This is supposed to be a draw, I think. I think this is supposed to be a draw. Yeah. Just keep the rook on the g-file, and this is supposed to be a draw. And it's also important that he managed to get the rook back to d2, because there's no rook coming to the g-file. So Fressinet is doing a textbook rook endgame with the pawn down, playing against the file pawn, the rank. And now they're just going back and forth. Pruijssers trying to flag Fressinet, but he's not going to succeed. This is going to be a draw. So the point of the whole fortress is that the rook is preventing the king from moving away from the pawn. So the king is unable, and now just king f2 and move the rook over here. And this is a draw. I'm not sure that is a draw. I'm not sure he should have gone there. It's okay. Is it? Rook f8. Okay, this is smart. This is very clever. Now he's using the white king as a shield to the black king. And he's just keeping the rook where it is to make sure that he cannot be checked away from his f2 position. So that was some very nice rook endgame technique from Laurent Fressinet. So he makes a draw. That means he ends up with, I think, 2 points. 2 points for Fressinet. My fantasy team would have hoped for more. But on the other hand, my second board last week was Simon Agdestein, who only scored 1 point. So 2 points is good. I'm happy with that. I should update the score. Yes, I'm sorry. Updating score 9-7. The Norway Gnomes have won against the Oslo Trolls with a 9-7 score. Yeah, there was increment, so they weren't gonna flag. They got 2 seconds extra. Two seconds extra on the clock for every move they made. Let me find the chat again. Marius is asking, could you show the moment where black went king f6? I'll see if I find that moment. King f6. Yeah, so it was this position, right? Where black is doing his best to keep as many pawns on the board as possible. So that's basically the strategy when you have a difficult endgame of any sort, really, is trying to exchange pawns and trying to make sure that there's only pawns on one side of the board so that you only have to decide, kind of defend one area. The Juggard has heard that the Trolls will make a big push for Magnus Carlsen when his contract is up. Yeah, no, that's gonna be shocking for the Gnomes if they lose their very best player. For the moment, I think we have him this season. So you cannot switch teams in the middle of the season. So Magnus, having played for the Norway Gnomes, having scored 8 points out of 8 possible, he is bound to the Norway Gnomes for this season. Marius thought black was trying to defend the position. No, black was trying to win, because these pawns cannot defend each other. And the white rook is having trouble defending both at the same time. So both I and the players playing thought that white was fighting to achieve a draw. Halloum Soda, or Raspberry Soda, ask, is there no silly season in chess? Yes. The Pro Chess League finishes in April, so I suppose you could say that the silly season is from April to December. If you ask me, that's too long of a silly season, but that's how it is. Actually, now I'm gonna spam the team chat with some of the Norway Gnomes emote. How do I do that? Is it even possible? Okay, I tried, but I managed to put one of the emotes in the team chat. I think that's going to be good enough. Calculated Potato has yet another question about the London system. What would you say is the best counter? I don't know. If I had the answer to that, I probably wouldn't share. But I think there are multiple ways of black to get a solid position. But it's not that easy. I mean, the London system has some venom. And I think Magnus Carlsen has demonstrated as much. Playing the London system in the World Rapid, World Blitz events with pretty good success. And a big thank you to Visigoth, who has subscribed 2 months running. And he is the #1 guy chasing for the Silver Hammer. Silver Hammer coming up for Visigoth when he subscribes the next month. Great stream, says the Sloth. Silver Hammer coming up for Visigoth. Okay, that's going to be it from me. Thank you everybody for watching. Keep in mind that my next stream will be tomorrow at 8:30 p.m. 8:30 p.m. Oslo time. I will be doing the Arena Kings tournament. That is my next stream. I'm going to be hosting the Pro Chess League. Just stay tuned and I will keep doing. There's going to be more chess. There's still 3 more divisions going on in the Pro Chess League. So there's going to be action still for the next 9 hours. Thank you to Mogvern for subscribing. Very good point from Marius. When is the next round? Big news, everybody. The next round is a special event and it's coming this Sunday. Sunday at 5 p.m. Oslo time. We will be playing a special event in which we play every single team in the other European division. So 8 p.m. Sunday, no, 5 p.m. Sunday, we will have a 4-hour session of the Gnomes challenging the Migraines, the Can Blockbusters, the Amsterdam Mosquitoes, the Reykjavik Puffins. We will be playing against the London Lions, the London Towers. We will be playing every single one of the teams in the other European section, division, conference, however you like to explain it. Hamnviking asks, will Magnus be playing? That is a very good question, and that is a question that will be answered as the teams are released. So the deadline for the teams is tomorrow at 10 p.m. So you can expect the teams to be out tomorrow at 10 p.m. and then you can also see whether or not Magnus will be playing. Okay, that was it from me. Thank you everybody, and have a good or happy Pro Chess League day.